Chapter 1. The Iron Talon of the Void. The Scarlet Fang loomed in the shadows of the gas giant Hikara 7, its angular crimson hull blending seamlessly with the darkness of space. To an untrained eye, the ship appeared as nothing more than a spectral wisp, a ghostly anomaly drifting among the stars. But for those who knew of its reputation, the mere mention of its name sent chills down the spines of Galactic Union enforcers and smugglers alike. It was a predator in every sense of the word, and at its helm was Lasara Vin, the most feared pirate in the Zarnath sector. Lasara stood on the bridge, her violet eyes scanning the holographic star map projected before her. It detailed the surrounding sectors in intricate detail, marking trade routes, patrol zones, and Union-controlled territories. Her teal-skinned face was illuminated by the soft glow of the map, highlighting her sharp, angular features and the faint scar that ran from her left cheek to her jawline, a souvenir from one of her earliest raids. "Captain," said Cress, her first mate. The Scythic warrior stood at her side, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. His mandibles clicked as he spoke, a nervous habit Lasara had long since grown accustomed to. "We've intercepted the Union's transmission. The convoy carrying the Terran artifact will pass through Sector Theta 9 in less than an hour." Lasara's lips curled into a predatory smile, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. "Perfect," she said, her voice smooth and commanding. "Prepare the boarding teams. Disable the escorts, but leave the transport intact. I want that artifact." Cress hesitated for a moment, his compound eyes flickering with unease. "Captain, the convoy is heavily armed. Their frigates are equipped with dash. Do you doubt me, Cress?" Lasara interrupted, her tone icy. Her gaze shifted to him, sharp as a blade. Cress bowed his head quickly. "Never, Captain. The teams will be ready." Lasara nodded, turning her attention back to the map. The artifact she sought was no ordinary treasure. Whispers in the black markets and underworld cantinas spoke of a Terran creation capable of generating unimaginable energy. Some called it a weapon. Others believed it was a relic of ancient human ingenuity. Whatever it was, the Galactic Union had gone to great lengths to protect it, which only made Lasara more determined to claim it. The Scarlet Fang moved into position, its engines humming softly as the cloaking systems activated. The bridge fell silent, save for the rhythmic beeping of the ship's instruments. Lasara watched as the convoy entered the sector, its lead ship broadcasting a weak distress signal, a clever tactic to lure potential attackers into a trap. But Lasara was no ordinary attacker. "Fire," she ordered. The Scarlet Fang unleashed a precise volley of ion blasts, targeting the frigate's shield generators. The escorts faltered, their defenses flickering before collapsing entirely. A second barrage disabled their engines, leaving them adrift in the void. The transport ship, a massive freighter bristling with turrets, attempted to return fire, but Lasara's ship was too fast, too nimble. The Scarlet Fang danced through the onslaught, its cloaking field making it nearly impossible to target. "Boarding teams launch," Lasara commanded. Dozens of boarding pods shot out from the Scarlet Fang, their thrusters guiding them toward the transport. The pods latched onto the hull with magnetic clamps, their cutting torches slicing through the reinforced plating. Lasara led the first wave, her combat armor gleaming with a faint energy field. In one hand, she wielded a magnetic blade, a weapon capable of slicing through even the toughest alloys, and in the other, a plasma pistol. The transport's corridors were narrow and dimly lit, echoing with the sound of blaster fire and the screams of Union soldiers. Lasara moved with precision and purpose, her blade cutting down anyone who dared stand in her way. Her crew followed, a ferocious tide of alien warriors and mercenaries. The Union soldiers were ill-prepared for the ferocity of the attack, their defensive lines crumbling under the pirates' assault. Lasara reached the cargo hold, where the artifact was said to be stored. The massive chamber was filled with rows of crates, each one marked with the insignia of Terran Research Command. In the center of the room stood a reinforced containment pod, its surface covered in biometric locks and encryption codes. Lasara approached it, her violet eyes gleaming with triumph. "This is it," she said, running her hand over the pod's surface. "Secure it and get it back to the Fang." As her crew worked to transport the pod, Lysara noticed something strange, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from within. She frowned, pressing her ear against the pod. The sound was barely audible, but it was unmistakably deliberate. "Captain," Cress said, approaching her, "we've encountered resistance near the engine room. Should we dash?" "Take care of it," Lysara interrupted, her focus on the pod, "and double-check the scans. I want to know exactly what we've captured." Back on the Scarlet Fong, the pod was secured in the cargo bay. Lysara stood before it, her curiosity burning. The scans confirmed that the pod contained a biological signature, a human, alive but unconscious. This was unexpected. The rumors had spoken of a Terran artifact, not a person. "Open it," Lysara ordered. Her crew hesitated, but they obeyed. The pod's locks disengaged with a hiss, and the door slid open to reveal a man. He was bound in restraints, his body bruised and his jumpsuit torn. Despite his battered appearance, there was something striking about him, his dark hair, his rugged features, and the quiet defiance etched into his face, even in unconsciousness. "Explain this," Lysara demanded, turning to Cress. Cress's mandibles clicked nervously. "The readings indicated a powerful energy source, Captain. I didn't expect it to be biological." Lysara's gaze shifted back to the man. He looked ordinary, yet the pod's sophisticated design suggested he was anything but. Why would the Union go to such lengths to protect a single human? "Take him to the brig," she ordered, "and keep him alive. For now." The man's arrival sparked a wave of unease among the crew. Lysara's reputation had been built on cold pragmatism, and yet she had chosen to spare this human. Whispers spread through the ship like wildfire, questioning her motives. But Lysara paid them no mind. She was too busy trying to unravel the mystery of her prisoner. Who was he? Why was he so important? And why did she feel a strange pull toward him, a flicker of something she couldn't quite name? As the Scarlet Fong drifted through the Nixus Prime asteroid field, Lysara found herself standing outside the brig, staring at the man through the transparent barrier of his cell. He was awake now, his green eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, his voice steady despite his predicament. Lysara tilted her head, intrigued. "Enlighten me." The man smirked faintly. "By capturing me, you've made yourself the target of every Union fleet in the galaxy. They won't stop until they find me." Lysara's lips curved into a cold smile. "Let them come," she said. "I'm not afraid of a fight." But deep down, she knew this was no ordinary battle. This man, this human, was going to change everything. Chapter 2. The Prisoner's Secret. The brig of the Scarlet Fong was a desolate place, designed not for comfort, but as a stark reminder of the power wielded by its occupants. It was a long, cold corridor lined with energy cells, each glowing faintly in the dim light of the ship's underbelly. The hum of the containment barriers filled the air, punctuated by the distant, mechanical groans of the ship's engines. Elias Drake sat on the metal bench in the center of his cell, his wrists bound in glowing energy cuffs. Despite his predicament, his posture was relaxed, his green eyes sharp and observant. He studied every detail of his surroundings, the layout of the cell, the frequency of the containment barrier's flicker, even the faint footsteps echoing down the hall as guards passed by. This wasn't the first time Elias had been held captive, but it was the first time his captor was someone like Lysara Vin. Lysara watched him from outside the barrier, her sharp violet eyes narrowing as she observed his calm demeanor. She had interrogated countless prisoners in her time as the most feared pirate in the Zarnath sector. Most broke within hours, their fear palpable. But Elias was different. He didn't cower or beg. Instead, he met her gaze with a quiet defiance that both intrigued and infuriated her. "You're awfully composed for a man in chains," she said finally, breaking the silence. Elias tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Panicking doesn't tend to help in these situations." Lysara's lips curved into a cold smile. "A pragmatist. How very Terran." "And you're Lysara Vin," Elias said, his voice steady. "The infamous pirate queen of the Zarnath sector. Your reputation precedes you." Her eyes narrowed further, but she made no move to correct him. Instead, she stepped closer, her combat boots clicking against the metal floor. I don't recall asking for your opinion. What I want to know is why the Galactic Union would risk an entire convoy to protect you. What are you hiding, Terran? Elias leaned back against the wall of his cell, his smirk fading into something more serious. And if I told you I'm just a scientist who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Lasara's laugh was sharp and humorless. A scientist? The Union doesn't deploy frigates to escort lab rats. Try again. For a moment, Elias said nothing, his green eyes studying her intently. Finally, he sighed. Fine. You want the truth? I'm part of a Terran research team working on advanced energy manipulation. The project was meant to revolutionize planetary defenses, warships, and other systems. We found a way to harness human bioelectric fields to amplify those systems tenfold. Lasara frowned, her curiosity piqued despite herself. And you're saying you're, what, the power source? Something like that, Elias said. My body emits a unique energy signature that can be used to stabilize and amplify the technology. The Union wasn't guarding me out of the kindness of their hearts, they were protecting their investment. Her eyes narrowed. And you escaped? Elias shrugged. I didn't exactly volunteer to become their guinea pig. Lasara's expression remained unreadable, but her mind was racing. If what Elias said was true, he was more valuable than any treasure she had ever stolen. But with that value came risk. The Galactic Union would stop at nothing to recover him, and rival pirates would descend on the Scarlet Fang like vultures if they caught wind of his importance. You've just made my life infinitely more complicated, Terran, she said, her tone cold. Welcome to my world, Elias replied, his smirk returning. Lasara returned to her quarters, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion. She prided herself on being ruthless, pragmatic, and in control. But something about Elias unsettled her. It wasn't just his story, it was the way he carried himself, the way he looked at her, as if he could see past her carefully constructed walls. She poured herself a glass of Rathian rum and stared out the viewport at the swirling debris of the Nixus Prime asteroid field. The crew was celebrating their latest victory in the mess hall, their cheers echoing faintly through the ship. Yet, Lasara felt no triumph. The human had planted a seed of doubt in her mind, one she couldn't shake. Why had she spared him? She could have handed him over to the Union, sold him to the highest bidder, or simply killed him and avoided the risk altogether. But instead, she had brought him aboard her ship, knowing full well the danger it posed. It wasn't like her to act without reason, and that frightened her more than anything. The next morning, Lasara returned to the brig, her resolve hardened. If Elias truly was the key to some Terran weapon, she needed answers he wasn't going to give freely. She found him sitting cross-legged in the center of his cell, his eyes closed as if meditating. The sight irritated her more than it should have. You look awfully relaxed for someone in your position, she said, stepping into view. Elias opened one eye, smirking faintly. Would panicking help? You're remarkably flippant for a man whose life is hanging by a thread, Lasara said, her voice sharp. And you're remarkably hesitant for someone who claims to be ruthless, Elias countered. Lasara's jaw tightened, but she didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she deactivated the energy barrier and stepped into the cell, standing over him. Enough games. Tell me everything, or I'll make you wish you had. Elias met her gaze, his expression unreadable. What do you want to know? Why the Union didn't just kill you, Lasara said, her tone icy. If you're too dangerous to let free, why keep you alive? Because they need me, Elias said simply. Without me, the technology doesn't work. They're sitting on a dead project without my energy signature. Lasara studied him for a long moment, her sharp violet eyes searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was sincerity. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of his story. Your presence here makes my ship a target, she said finally. The Union will come for you and for me. Then maybe we should work together, Elias said, his voice calm but firm. You want to survive? So do I. We can help each other. Lasara's laugh was bitter. And why should I trust you? Because you haven't killed me yet, Elias said, his smirk returning. That counts for something, doesn't it? For a moment, Lasara said nothing. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, her thoughts a tangled web of doubt and curiosity. Elias Drake was more than a prisoner, he was a mystery. And Lasara Vin hated mysteries. Chapter 3. The Bonds That Break. The Scarlet Fong cruised through the outskirts of the Zarnath sector, its cloaking systems humming softly as it slipped unnoticed past scattered asteroid fields and derelict ships. On the bridge, Lasara Vin stood at her command station, her arms crossed as she stared out at the stars beyond. The weight of her decision to keep Elias aboard was beginning to press on her. Every passing moment increased the risk of discovery, but the human story and the potential he represented had struck a chord she couldn't ignore. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, their usual camaraderie replaced by the unease that had settled over the ship since the raid. Lasara's reputation as a fearless leader was unshakable, but even the most loyal members of her crew whispered doubts when they thought she wasn't listening. She couldn't blame them. Captain Cress, her first mate, interrupted her thoughts. The Sithic's mandibles clicked nervously, a habit Lasara had come to recognize as a sign of discomfort. We're approaching the haven at Draka's Belt. It's quiet, no signs of Union patrols. Lasara nodded, her violet eyes narrowing. Good. Bring us into dock. I'll brief the crew once we're secured. Cress hesitated. Captain, a word, in private? She turned to him, her expression sharp. Speak. Cress shifted uncomfortably. The crew. They're uneasy. Keeping the human aboard, he's a liability. If word gets out, every pirate in the sector will come for us. Not to mention the Union. Lasara's gaze hardened. The crew will follow my orders. If anyone has a problem with that, they're welcome to air their grievances. Cress bowed his head. Of course, Captain. But Lasara knew his concerns were valid. The question wasn't whether the crew would follow her, was how long their loyalty would hold if they felt their lives were at stake. The pirate haven at Draka's Belt was a sprawling complex built into the remains of a shattered asteroid. The docks were a chaotic maze of ships, each one battered and patched in a way that spoke to a life of constant danger. Smugglers, mercenaries, and traders bustled through the corridors, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages and dialects. Lasara led a small contingent of her crew into the haven's central hub, a smoky cantina where deals were made, alliances forged, and lives bought and sold. The air was thick with the smell of Vrathian ale and the sharp tang of ozone from poorly maintained weapons. She moved with purpose, her presence commanding attention even in a place where power was measured in blood and credits. Her black combat armor, adorned with the red insignia of the Scarlet Fong, marked her as a predator among scavengers. Those who crossed her path quickly stepped aside, their eyes averted. But as she negotiated with a weapons dealer in a shadowy corner of the cantina, Lasara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The sensation was subtle at first, prickling at the back of her neck, but it grew stronger with each passing moment. She scanned the room, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. Most of the patrons were too absorbed in their own business to notice her, but near the entrance, a group of men lingered. They were dressed in mismatched armor, their faces obscured by helmets. One of them glanced in her direction, and Lasara's instincts flared. Union bounty hunters. Lasara turned back to the weapons dealer, her voice low and calm. Our business is done. Have my supplies delivered to Dock 7. The dealer nodded, oblivious to the tension in her tone. Lasara left the cantina without another word, her crew falling into step behind her. As they made their way back to the ship, she kept her hand close to the plasma pistol at her side, her senses on high alert. The moment they reached the dock, she turned to Cress. Double the guards on the perimeter. We're leaving as soon as the supplies are loaded. Cress nodded, his mandibles clicking. Understood, Captain. Back on the Scarlet Fong, Elias was pacing his cell, his mind racing. He had heard snippets of conversation from passing guards, enough to piece together that they were at a pirate haven. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone recognized his value and came for him. When the cell door opened, he turned to see Lasara standing in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable, but there was an edge to her voice as she spoke. "We need to talk." Elias raised an eyebrow. "I thought that's what we've been doing." She stepped inside, the door hissing shut behind her. For a moment, she said nothing, her sharp violet eyes studying him intently. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she said finally, her voice low. "By being here, you've painted a target on my ship. The Union will come for you, and when they do, they'll destroy everything in their path." Elias met her gaze, his expression calm. "You could always let me go." Her lips curved into a bitter smile. "You know I can't do that. Not now." "Then what's your plan, Captain?" Elias asked, his tone serious. "Because running will only delay the inevitable." Lasara's jaw tightened. "What would you suggest, Terran? Handing you over to the Union? Selling you to the highest bidder?" Elias hesitated, then shook his head. "No, but if you want to survive, you'll need to stop thinking like a pirate." Her eyes narrowed. "And start thinking like what?" "Like someone who wants to change the rules," Elias said. "You've got the ship, the crew, and the firepower to take on the Union. But you need me if you want to turn this situation to your advantage." Lasara's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You think I trust you?" "I think you don't have a choice," Elias said, his voice steady. "You know what the Union is capable of. If they get me back, they'll keep coming for you until there's nothing left." For a long moment, they stared at each other, the air between them charged with tension. Finally, Lasara turned and walked to the door. "You're right about one thing," she said without looking back. "This isn't just about survival anymore." As the Scarlet Fang prepared to leave the haven, the bounty hunters made their move. A squad of heavily armed soldiers stormed the docks, their weapons blazing as they fought their way toward the ship. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the corridors, and Lasara's crew scrambled to defend their territory. On the bridge, Lasara barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Raise the shields. Activate the defense turrets. I want those bastards off my ship." The Scarlet Fang roared to life, its cannons firing in synchronized bursts. The bounty hunters were well trained, but they hadn't anticipated the ferocity of Lasara's crew. Within minutes, the attackers were forced to retreat, their ships limping away into the void. As the Scarlet Fang jumped to hyperspace, Lasara stood on the bridge, her heart pounding. The attack had been a warning, a reminder of the danger they faced, but it had also solidified her resolve. Elias Drake wasn't just a prisoner. He was a catalyst, and whether she liked it or not, Lasara knew her life would never be the same. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. The Scarlet Fang rocketed through hyperspace, its systems humming with tension as if reflecting the mood of the crew. Lasara stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of star maps and tactical layouts. The recent bounty hunter attack had proven that their position was precarious. It wasn't just the Union they had to worry about anymore. Word of Elias Drake's value had spread, and now every scavenger, mercenary, and pirate in the sector would be hunting them. Lasara's violet eyes flickered to the hologram of the Zarnath sector. It displayed the known locations of Union patrols and pirate havens, as well as a pulsating red icon marking their current position. Her crew had worked tirelessly to map out possible escape routes, but every option carried risks. "We can't keep running," Lasara said, her voice cutting through the tense silence. Her senior officers, gathered around the table, exchanged uneasy glances. Cress, her first mate, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Captain, with respect, the Union's forces are too vast. Engaging them head-on would be suicide. And staying hidden will only delay the inevitable," Lasara countered. "They'll find us eventually, no matter how far we run." Cress hesitated, then bowed his head. "What's the plan, then?" Lasara leaned over the table, her gaze fierce. "We turn the tables. If the Union wants to chase us, we'll give them something to chase. But it won't be what they expect." The crew listened intently as Lasara outlined her plan: A daring strike against a Union research station in the Tyrus Nebula. The station, known as Helios 9, was rumored to house experimental weapons and advanced technology. But more importantly, it was the heart of the Union's energy manipulation project, the project Elias had been a part of. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," Lasara said, her voice like steel. We'll cripple their operations and make it clear that we're not prey they are." The room was silent for a moment, then a ripple of agreement spread through the officers. They had followed Lasara through countless battles, trusting in her cunning and determination. Even now, facing overwhelming odds, that trust held firm. In the brig, Elias sat on the edge of his cot, his expression pensive. The door hissed open, and Lasara stepped inside, her presence commanding as always. "We're making a move," she said without preamble. "Helios 9. I assume you know it." Elias nodded, his green eyes narrowing. "I know it. That's where the project began." "Then you know what's at stake," Lasara said. "If we're going to pull this off, I need your help. Tell me everything you know about their defenses, their protocols, their weaknesses." Elias studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, but if we're doing this, I want something in return." Lasara raised an eyebrow. "You're in no position to negotiate, Terran." "Maybe not," Elias said. "But if I'm putting my life on the line, I want your word that you'll protect my people, my research team. They didn't sign up for this, and the Union won't spare them if we succeed." Lasara's expression softened, just for a moment. "You care about them." "They're the reason I escaped," Elias said simply. "I couldn't let the Union use them as pawns." Lasara nodded slowly. "You have my word. If we find them, they'll be under my protection." For the first time, Elias smiled a small, genuine smile. "Then let's get to work." The Scarlet Fong emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Tyrus Nebula, its cloaking systems engaged as it approached the shimmering cloud of gas and debris. Helios 9 floated at the heart of the nebula, a gleaming station surrounded by Union warships. The station's defenses were formidable, with automated turrets and energy shields that could withstand even the heaviest bombardment. Lasara stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the station. "Cress, are the decoy drones ready?" "Ready and waiting, Captain," Cress replied. "Deploy them," Lasara ordered. Dozens of drones launched from the Scarlet Fong, their small, nimble frames darting toward the station. The drones emitted false energy signatures, mimicking the presence of a fleet of ships. Within moments, the Union warships scrambled to intercept, their weapons firing at the decoys. "Now," Lasara said, "take us in." The Scarlet Fong slipped through the chaos, its cloaking systems masking its approach. The crew worked in tense silence, their movements precise as they prepared for the assault. Lasara's plan relied on speed and precision. Any misstep could mean disaster. As the ship docked with the station, Lasara led the boarding team, her magnetic blade and plasma pistol at the ready. Elias was at her side, his energy cuffs removed but his hands still bound to a tracking device. He carried a small datapad, its screen glowing with schematics of the station. "This way," Elias said, his voice low. "The control room is 3 levels up. If we can disable their power grid, the defenses will go down." The corridors of Helios 9 were eerily quiet. The station's crew focused on the external threat. Lasara and her team moved swiftly, neutralizing guards with precision strikes. Elias followed close behind, his mind racing as he navigated the labyrinthine halls. When they reached the control room, Lasara motioned for her team to secure the perimeter. She and Elias slipped inside, their weapons drawn. The room was a hive of activity, with technicians monitoring the station's systems and soldiers standing guard. Lasara didn't hesitate. She moved like a shadow, her blade cutting through the air as she incapacitated the guards. Elias darted to the central console, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he accessed the station's mainframe. "Hurry," Lasara said, her voice tight. "Almost there," Elias muttered. "Just need to bypass the dash." An alarm blared, cutting him off. The technicians scattered, and Lasara turned to see a squad of Union soldiers rushing toward them. "Hold them off," Elias shouted. Lasara sprang into action, her blade flashing as she engaged the soldiers. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, narrowly missing her as she moved with deadly precision. Behind her, Elias continued working, his focus unwavering despite the chaos around him. "Got it!" he shouted after what felt like an eternity. "The power grid is down." The station shuddered as its defenses faltered, the lights flickering before plunging into darkness. Lysara grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him toward the exit. Time to go. The team fought their way back to the Scarlet Fong, the station's remaining forces scrambling to contain the breach. As they boarded the ship, Lysara barked orders to the crew. Get us out of here. Maximum speed. The Scarlet Fong roared to life, its engines flaring as it shot away from the station. Behind them, Helios, 9 burned, its systems crippled and its defenses shattered. In the aftermath of the raid, Lysara and Elias stood on the bridge, watching the station disappear into the distance. The crew cheered, their morale soaring after the successful operation. You did well, Lysara said, her voice softer than usual. So did you, Elias replied. But this is just the beginning. The Union won't let this go unanswered. Lysara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Let them come. We're ready. For the first time in years, Lysara felt something she thought she had lost hope. And as she looked at Elias, she realized that the human who had once been her prisoner had become something far more important, her ally.